Essa é uma verdadeira aula com Alejandro Martínez, indicado a 2 prêmios da ESC, diretor de fotografia de Fallout e, claro, House of the Dragon, Casa do Dragão. Você não pode perder essa verdadeira aula e a gente tá com as inscrições para a Pilha Academy abertas e eu tô com um cupom de desconto para vocês que só vai ser válido por tempo limitado, exclusivo desse vídeo aqui. Acessando o link na descrição, você já consegue fazer a sua matrícula. Eu espero ver vocês lá e, claro, aproveitem a aula. Do you find yourself bringing techniques that you learn in the commercial world to the narrative world and vice versa? How is that balance for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a DP, when we're shooting commercials, we're very close to our narrative ways. I started in commercials, and you know, I come from both a film family, but also my side of the family, my dad, they were all commercial producers, directors, DPs. So my background is actually a lot from the commercial world. Actually, I started as a commercial DP. I mean, back then, I'm talking late 90s, there was this whole thing about commercials, and there's like this money and there's big stories and there's this big directors. You got to, use new equipment in commercials and try new things. It was a very interesting. I'm not saying it's not interesting anymore, but it has become less of a hype to shoot commercials. I teach in the Mexican Film School in the CCC, and I tell my students, so who of you want to shoot commercials? And nobody raises their hands. I'm like, okay, you're all wrong. You're all going to end up shooting commercials, and you want to shoot commercials. Like a lot of connections, directors that you meet end up coming from there. So I always encourage it. I love shooting them. I always say that's kind of where I come from.
That's awesome. And I haven't introduced you to Anna, but she's the DP for all my projects and also my wife. So, and she's graduating from AFI in a
Oh,
few
amazing.
days.
Yeah, just gonna graduate this weekend, so almost
Oh,
there.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm very excited.
AFI, great school, great, amazing
Yeah.
school.
So at AFI, we have the cinematographers specifically have the visual essay, which is shot on 35 millimeter film.
Yeah.
And it's a collaboration with Kodak. And Temple, we shot for AFI. So it was like the last project that I did at AFI. It was a really interesting process. I love shooting on 35. I feel like any DP nowadays, right? It's such a like, it's so rare that we can do that, at least like in the beginning of your career. So I was very happy that I was able to have that experience.
No, amazing. Especially LA. LA is a great city to shoot film.
Yeah.
I mean, they're one of the very few cities, if not the only one, that does the processing. 35 is beautiful. I think it's something that you need to go through. Even it's just the experience of it. I really like shooting on 35. And it's not like I miss it. I do miss it, but I miss, what I think I miss the most is the discipline on set with 35. I think it's different. I do miss kind of like the whole set ambience and how everybody's a little bit more focused, and, us not being in the monitor all the time. I think I miss that. Yeah, it's great. Congratulations. Let's do it.
So much.
It was also my first time directing something on film, and it was very different. I definitely appreciate you whenever you say, like, the discipline and everything. I think I learned a lot from the rehearsal process, and whenever you're talking about how much we can learn in commercials, and then I started doing commercials way back when I think commercials were more sought after in a way. And obviously it was also a place for us to experiment with different techniques and just, get and just learn. Where, in narrative, it's harder to learn and figure out what's the, how to improve. I guess, whenever you're in your point in your career, how do you see your relationship with learning?
I think it's a huge part of it. Consider myself that always learning, that's it's a process. I myself try to learn constantly, try to be in courses, I'm always trying to find something, even if it's not related to photography. Like I would be taking, drawing courses or design. Now I'm taking this courses to kind of understand what AI is coming from, just to kind of be able to wrangle it. I don't have a strong opinion either way, but I do think it's coming, and I think I don't want to just let it, see it pass. So I'm actually, constantly learning about things like that. But I also teach. So I was brought up on a set. My whole family was in film. So I was always this person who was being taught not only photography, but film in general, film protocols on set and how to behave in so many ways. I'm a big, fan of having people on set, learning, on teaching. I'm a true believer in film schools. I think they do have a big part of an industry and in our craft. If it's not about what you learn, it's about who you learn it with and the processes that you go through while learning. And I think that's very formative. I think learning is a huge part of our industry. Every time I think there has to be a shift in the industry, either call it being inclusive or just learning new techniques. I think it needs to come from the bottom. I think it's the upcoming generations of the upcoming people that need to, we need to do it from the beginning, not only from the top. So yeah, learning is a huge part of this.
There's this expectation that whenever we get to, the higher levels of the industry, you already have to not show any insecurities or any part of, your repertoire that is a weakness. So whenever you're in House of the Dragon, what have you learned, I guess, with the last season or the last previous seasons, and how was that experience?
Well, I think of it as I can never stop learning, and I really find every opportunity to learn from somebody, either camera operator, somebody from the crew. Funny that you mentioned it, because this insecurity is about maybe not letting people tell you how to do things, or you're just listening to an idea. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a VFX supervisor on Thrones, on Dragons. I remember that we were shooting that scene that became kind of quite famous about Rhaenyra walking to the throne and her reflection on a pool of blood, and I remember that was his idea. And I remember being on set, and the VFX supervisor came to me, and we have a really good relationship. But even if we didn't, I am really open always to those things. And he came to me and he said, "Alex, why do you do a shot of, look at the pool of blood and let's see the reflection of the throne?" And I at that moment, I remember thinking I could just tell him off. I could just what the f- are you talking about? Get out of here, whatever. But not only because he's a friend and he's really good and talented, but I actually thought it was a good idea. And I was like, wow. I have a kind of a joke that I always do on set when somebody suggests me something and somebody that I like, I will go and scream out loud, "Oh, everybody! I just had a great idea." And then so I remember he told me that about the puddle of blood, and I was like, "That's such a cool shot." And I went to the director and I just screamed out loud, "I just had a great idea. This is all mine. And why don't we shoot Rhaenyra reflected on the pool of blood?" And of course, I let everybody know that it's a joke. But I think that was a really good example. You should always be open, not only to learn, but open for suggestions. You really don't know, because even the people who don't know as much as maybe you or somebody else on the set, those are really fresh ideas. It can be very naive, but maybe from naiveness comes a really good idea. Then maybe you have so much information in your brain that you're actually, limiting yourself to some very simple concepts. And maybe you're thinking about this crane shot that comes around, and you're tangling yourself in something, and maybe just you shoot the pool of blood. So I think learning it's a big part of who we are, and we should never stop. We should always be open for suggestions, for new ideas, and we can always reject them. We can always say, "You know what, maybe not," or that's. But you never know. And to give credit to people for it is amazing, right? We don't own every single aspect of our craft, so I think that's a big part of learning. I think you go every day and learn from your crew. Sometimes I double guess a director, and that happens a lot. I think it happens a lot with all DPs. We second guess our directors. We think it's not the best idea, but then they prove us wrong, right? And it's like, oh, that was a lesson. And it's good to go home with a couple of good learned lessons that day.
But yeah, and you mentioned something. I love that story, by the way. I was gonna ask you about that shot, because obviously it is such an interesting shot, because I guess with the scale of the series and the scale of everything, finding those very small and intimate shots must be sort of the challenge, because it's almost like two different brains working. And when we get the episode with Rhaenyra's POV, I think you guys did such an interesting job there of making something more personal and more like an auteur. There's a lot of freedom there. There's a lot of different techniques that you guys use. And I'm going to pull up some clips soon so that we can kind of go over them together. But ahead of an episode like that you guys are shifting the language to something that is more POV, what's the conversation like with the director and the showrunners? What's that whole dynamic like for something that kind of innovates in the language a little bit?
There's a lot of conversations going on in an episode like that, especially when you're trying to really not just tell a story and just not tell it in the way that a big scale show tells a story in so many ways, but you're actually trying to make it more intimate, and you're trying to make it, like you said, more of an auteur kind of thing. And then also in episode 3, I remember perfectly, the one paragraph in the first scene, it says, "From here on, everything is on Rhaenyra's POV," and that was the only note that it had. It was really open for interpretation. The first time we read the script, Claire, the director, and I talked to Ryan, and Ryan said, well, yeah, basically that's it. Whatever you consider it to be, but we should feel that it's what's happening to her. And we started working on that. Claire and I had so many conversations and talks, and we kind of created our own rules for it. We watched a lot of references. We talk about what does it mean, what does it mean to create an episode like this? And it doesn't, so it doesn't look like a filler. So it's actually an episode that actually telling the story of this first day. I remember we started calling it the Rooney experience. And the reason we call it that is because we came to this logic is like everything you see is what she sees. Like your experience is the artist's experience. If she's not looking at somebody when that other person speaks, that other person should not get a close-up. That other person should not be in focus. Whatever she's experiencing is what you experience. If she turns, you turn. If she looks at somebody, then you're allowed to maybe go in and punch into that person. But if she's not looking at that person, you're not allowed to. And we set our limits. We sometimes when you're setting a set of rules for a scene or an episode like that, you kind of want to know what your limits are. We set our extremes. This movie, a beautiful movie called Son of Saul. It's a World War II movie about a concentration camp, and it's so subjective. It's not funny. It's like you don't see anything that is not our main character. So we know that was our extreme limit on the other side. Our very loose, that was easy. Just like any other episode would be an extreme, and that's on the other side and then we had to fit it in between. So it was like, how do we tell a story that she sees, that she smells, that she and then we just went for it. We had a big conversation with the camera crew. We told them what we wanted to do. It was something new. Maybe it wasn't too dramatic or too extreme, but it was definitely new. And they were super happy. They were up for it. It's like, let's go. Camera moves that would only involve her. Focus pulling. Focus pullers were really involved in it. They knew when to pull focus to something or not to. And then we just took it, Of course, we knew that we were creating rules to be able to break them, but at least we were coming from a starting point that really took us in this direction. And it was such a nice episode to shoot, because it was the first episode that was shot in the entire season, because basically we were buying time for everything to be ready. And that was such a personal, contained episode that it was perfect. We got the actors, we got the sets. It was mostly shot in the Red Keep. So that was the first episode to be shot. So we had fresh crew for the first couple of months. Everybody's so super happy to be there, and everybody was super happy to be shooting that kind of an episode. And then we just took it from there. And then I'm sure, I did see the episode, but I haven't seen it in a month or two. And I know that we broke our rules, but it was there. The concept was there, and it was, everybody had it in the top of their minds, not only us, the department heads, but the actual crew everybody knew that we were shooting something a little bit different, a little bit special. And I think the way everybody just got into it, and everybody was, we had camera operators reminding us, like, Alex, you can't do that. What do you mean? No, you can't do that wide shot. What? Oh, well, okay. And they themselves would explain me the rules, and it's like, oh yes, you're right, we can't do that unless we bring her into frame. We cannot do that wide shot. So it was really fun. It was really fun to involve everybody. I think everybody was just happy to be shooting something very different. I always say that limits will set you free. And I think when you're shooting something like this, when you set yourself some limits, you really feel free to do something, you really feel free that you don't have to worry about that. So if you decide to shoot a movie with one lens, what does that mean? That means that I don't have to think about lenses anymore. So that'll set me free in a lot of ways. So those kind of episodes are really fun to shoot and to prep, because you'll just feel free to do everything else except for you can't do. I think that was the episode 3.
I love hearing about the theory behind establishing the visual language, and also this work in group with all the crew, how you were able to hold each other accountable with the visual language that you created. I think that's the beauty of what we do. But also what I was very curious about was, from a technical point, did you make any? I saw on the BTS that you talked about like having a hero lens, and I was curious on the technical side. Like in addition to camera movement and focus, did you change anything specifically, for example, such as a lens for this episode? And when you were looking for that lens, what characteristics were you looking for to help you create that more intimate experience with Rhaenyra?
We definitely involved the technical aspects of it. I mean, I don't think it was as blunt as, shallow depth of field. I think we try to go a little bit deeper than that. It's like where the focus is and where it's supposed to be. We had been using this hero lenses from Ari, even from season 1, but then they were called T lenses. They were a prototype that Ari was coming out with in 2021. So we kind of borrowed that prototype and we use it in very specific scenes. Basically, this hero lens, what they do is it will have a little bit of a slightly shift focal point or focal wall, and you can shift it a little bit. The original T lenses didn't have you couldn't grade them, like you couldn't. It just had it fixed. And then Ari came out with the hero lenses, which is a set of lenses that kind of do that. You can actually go, let's say, from 1 to 5, is I think is like the power of the effect, and it just shifts a little bit the plane of the focus. So instead of having the 2 eyes in focus, you will have 1, and then the plane will go weird, kind of what the tilt and shift lenses used to do. But this is kind of like on the same lens. So I think they're very experimental. But we kind of had that in the top of our minds when we started talking about this episode. We said, well, what happens if every time we're in this kind of like a awkward in Rhaenyra's head kind of a situation, let's just do close-ups with that. We did shoot a lot of things with both lenses. Let's shoot the non-hero version and then the hero version, because you kind of lose perspective sometimes, and then you realize you're using the effect too much. So we were kind of careful about that. Again, everybody was incorporated, so our camera operators would come in, or ACs would come as like, you're forgetting the hero version. Oh, okay. Or you're using the hero lenses too much. Let's backtrack on that. But yes, we definitely used specific lenses for specific feelings. Being the hero lenses, the ones that were more about what's going on in her head. It was all about her, that episode. So it's like, if she's thinking, is she confused? There's a couple of shots that are very like that stuck into my head. It's like her sitting in the throne, listening to these people, and she's very confused and she's really awkward. And I remember doing a couple of shots with that hero lens, and you can really picture that something is really off. So yeah, it was movements, Steadicam going around her, keeping the focus on her as opposed to kind of drop the focus back to the other character. And I guess that was also enhanced with sound and music, but it was definitely what we intended to do. It's just be in her head the whole time, if it meant the lens. House of the Dragon is not a show that you want to be very effective with lights. So because at some point I was like, should we move the light? Should we dim it or create a light effect? But it's not a thing of the show. Like, you always have to kind of move in the universe that you're moving, and it's never been that theatrical. So it was like, okay, so maybe the light's not, but what happens if we play with the camera moves and the lenses? One of the things that I enjoy the most about the process in general is just to give meaning to certain things, concepts, either, why would, a close-up of Rhaenyra with this funky lens means? Well, it means that she's troubled. But maybe really basic things that you keep to yourself, or maybe you communicate to a few people. But by me giving it meaning, and maybe it's overthinking sometimes, but you actually kind of make things work in your head. And you're not just doing random stuff. And I think that's what happened with the lensing on episode 3.
Yeah, that's amazing. I really felt that when I was watching it, and I was so curious about what was your train of thought like behind the choice of the lens. And you can really feel like she's almost I don't know if that's the word in English, like feeling asphyxiated by like all the pressure and very much into her head. So that's amazing that you guys were able to have that conversation. And for this episode specifically, did you end up using like a wider lens so you could get in even closer to her, or not really? That's just something that
I don't think we went wider than we normally do. We don't like, and I say we because I think Claire shares that with me. I mean, for me, putting a wide lens in a close-up, it's not like I don't like it, but it's a statement, and I think it's really you really need to mean it. You really need to have a why, because if not, it just looks random. When sometimes when you're watching something, and it's just like a close up with an 18 millimeter, that has to mean something. If it not, just don't do it. Just like do it. So for us, it kind of it wasn't like that. It wasn't about creating like a DC feeling or like she's completely off. She just was not being comfortable. So I mean, we have our lenses that we like to do close-ups on, and they're usually not that wide. We really like using our 35 for really close up, cinematic. Also, we never go super tight. We don't think is the show for that. We always want to see actors acting in their hands. It's really rare that we go really really tight, and I think that we share as the language of the show. So it's always like, let's go in, let's do a close-up, or let's do a title shot. We both know what we want. In this particular episode, I think it was more about staying with her. It's like what is she experiencing? What is she looking at? What is she thinking? If she pans or she looks that way, the camera will pan and come back to her. Always from her perspective. I think it was more about that than creating an enhanced feeling. So it was a really fun episode to shoot. We knew that what was coming. We knew what was coming for the rest of the season. We knew it was going to be busy, and that was like shooting a film within a film, and it was like 30 days in a studio, in a stage, in a location that we know so well, just shooting acting scenes. So it was really special.
Did Emma have any collaboration with you guys from the camera department?
Absolutely. It's, the actors are great. And Emma, it's rare that we have deep conversations with any of the actors about specific parts of the roles, because they know them so well. But this we did talk to Emma. We actually, Claire and I went out for dinner with Emma, and we talked with them about the episode and our ideas and how we wanted to, do it, and how much we needed their help for that. Right? It was not just us following Rhaenyra all over with a lens. We really needed Rhaenyra to collaborate in this. We really needed Emma to understand where we're coming from. So we did have, a long and then a lot of conversations with Emma about it, and they completely helped us, and they were a huge part of what episode 3 was. I think they did understand what we were trying to do, and it was a big part of how it would turn out. Yeah, absolutely.
From dinners like that to watching movies together, what do you think are rituals that you have with your team outside of the set that make everything that happened on set be so easy?
I think it's just to get to know the person. I mean, in talking about, for example, a director, and you guys probably know this so well, but it's just to get to meet, know the person and know what. If you can, of course, finish the sentence for for each other. But if there's not enough time, or you don't, it's just getting to know. Sometimes I just tell directors, let's just watch a movie, let's just talk, let's just have a coffee. If you start telling me about the shots and we've only met for like a week, that's not going to help me. What's going to help me is to go out and have a dinner with you and talk about our families and talk about, and then, in a van, you talk about, anything that's been going on in the world. What do you think about, politics? What do you think about the World Cup? Anything that, and then you get to meet the person. And then I think that's the most important part of a good collaboration. Sometimes you don't have enough time to meet people like that, but you should try. I always try to really step, to just cross that line. But maybe a lot of people don't. Maybe as a Latin American, I just do it. But to just go and make a joke and just make people laugh and get the most out of them. I think people will respond better when you involve them, when you tell them that what they're doing is important for the shot or for the scene. If it could be the Dolly Grape, or it can be, whoever, but you're just making them feel that what they do is really important, and it really reflects, and it does. So for that, you need to get to know people a little bit, and anything, and a close collaboration, with a director, a production designer, and AD. You kind of the better you communicate, the better you'll work together. And I think that's my theory, that you need to get to meet the person. And as a DP, I've always considered myself that a tool for the director and somebody that has to not necessarily share, but it's not about sharing. It's not about thinking what's wrong or right. It's about, how can I help? How can my vision of this help your vision? Director's vision of always being on top, which I think is a crucial part of being a DP, is like to always know that your place is not to direct, but that you'll go as far as you're allowed to, imprint your vision. Because I think most DPs have this feeling, is like, I could direct this. Well, yeah, but you're not directing this, right? If you wanted to direct, well, just go and direct. That's not the DP's job. But our job is to really help, is just to really put a vision into it. So sometimes we'll have the open door to create, shots and to put our vision into it. And sometimes we won't, because maybe we have a really visionary director that knows exactly what they want to do. Then our job is to help with that. Our personality will be a part of that as much as the director. So that relationship and how you meet and how much you know that person is crucial. Of course, you don't always have the opportunity to know them that well. Maybe it's time, or maybe two persons that would never be friends in real life. But you still have to do the work of getting into that mind, you like it or not, but you need to try to connect to that mind.
Can you talk a little bit about the dynamics between the showrunner, the director, and you? And how can you make sure to honor the showrunner's vision while honoring the director's vision, and how all that goes? Because it must be, a little bit of a dance sometimes, I imagine.
It's an important one, and it's a fragile one. It's one that you need to really feed, and it's also one that changes every single project, right? I've been in shows where showrunners is not really sure about what they want, but they have a concept that you kind of need to help with that, or they're really sure about what they want, and you really need to follow that. But I think it has to be more of a social relationship. It's like understanding boundaries, understanding what everybody wants, but also how everybody feeds everybody. And at the end of the day, you need to be on the same track. You need to want to do the best show possible. Can be contradictory, because then it like the experience won't be great if you keep thinking that everybody wants the wrong thing, or that showrunner doesn't have a clue what or director's wrong. I think you need to make an effort as I never had a really bad experience in my career, like one that I walk out of this project, but that's because I think I try to do that effort to blend in, to kind of, give everybody what they want, including myself. I think it's a relationship you need to feed. Yeah, that you can't just take it for granted and, think that you're the one that knows and nobody knows, or that, that you would make it such a better show, but if you were directing it or show running it, I think that's a mistake. I think that's where the bad experience comes. And I think you just need to feed that relationship. What does the showrunner want? How do I get it? Do I need to ask a question? Do I need to, make a point and say, should I fight for this idea, or this way? I think this should look, or this should be shot. And I found myself kind of like almost lobbying for an idea, and sometimes I get a yes and sometimes I get a no. If I get a no, I get a really polite no. You should also consider yourself, I'm not going to say more to the director side, but you are working for a director. At the end, your creative loyalty hangs to a director, and that director will know how much they want to kind of take it to the showrunner. But you need to keep that director DP relationship, because that's kind of like the cinematic way to do it. And if you stick to that, then at least you're getting what you want to give the director. Even if the showrunner becomes like the counterpart, at least you'll have that kind of thing making sense. Hopefully the triangle will work. But if not, at least you have the duo working, and that's that takes you further.
Yeah, I imagine at the end of the day, it's the director has to deal with the showrunner, and then you guys can communicate between yourselves. So it leads more into a streamlined, right, communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the one thing you can do is just go around the director. It's like, oh, I have a great idea. I know the showrunner is going to love it. And then you go around and the director's like, wait, what? You really have to keep that dynamic, and you're working for a director, right? Absolutely. And I found, I've worked with showrunners that I really, like how they think, like how they write, and I would just easily go and shoot that with the showrunner as a director. But that's not the case, right? You're working with a director. That's kind of the relationship that you need to take care of the most, right? And creatively, that's kind of where the creation happens in so many ways. So yeah, Definitely, you need to stick to that.
I was very curious about this shot because I saw sort of a motif here. First of all, it's absolutely stunning and charged with so much storytelling that, you know, I was like, there was one, I think probably one of my favorite shots of all seasons. And then we see like there's a connection between, you know, the silhouette and the fire here on another shot. And I was just curious about the shot in general, how it went. And what's the conversation before something like this?
Oh, this is a perfect example of how a creative dynamic works in that show. So basically, the scene started with director Claire saying, "Okay," and I envisioned this episode starting with a floating dead body, and there's just like blood coming to it, and just like, you know, coming so close to frame, it'll just blacken all the frame. And then we talked about it, like, yes, of course. And I said, well, yeah, and you know, there should be fire on the surface. So we started, okay, so episode 1 finishes, you know, we always think about, especially for episode opener, we think about, okay, so the first frame that audiences see is this floating body, and then blood coming out of the body, and then, you know, so we start thinking about it, and there's like fire on the surface, so that means that the last remains of the battle are there. There's still dragons going on. We started telling that story to, you know, to the crew. And of course we like, okay, so how are we going to shoot this? Well, we need to be in a pool. Okay, we didn't have a pool. So VFX comes in. It's like, okay, don't worry about it. Just like shoot the body and shoot an element of a floating body, and then shoot an element of the fire on top, and then we'll make it work. So we go there. You know, we visualize it. Of course, that's also very related to the shot that follows, which is a dragon like torching a guy on the surface. So we go out there to shoot. We go into the pool, and then we make tests of this guy floating on the blood, and then it's like, okay, why don't we shoot some wood elements? So this was it was conceived in a table by a director and a DP. We thought about this in a cafe or something, but then the evolution of this shot and really involving everybody, you know, stunts, SFX, you know, how are we going to deal with the floating guy? How are we going to shoot this in the pool? And then VFX collaborating on enhancing. When I thought a fire on the surface, I never thought of this being so cool, and that the coolness of the fire is absolutely VFX, because in a shot like this, you kind of think it, you kind of know what you want, but we have such an amazing and creative VFX team that when I first saw this shot, I was like, oh my god, this is so much better than I ever thought it was going to be, because the fire has a rhythm, and if I remember correctly, this even has a sound, a little bit of music. And when I first saw it, it was like, this is so much better than I thought of it. Yeah, and now, yeah, and then it is like some fireballs, and then the real fire. So I think this is a great example. And then the dragon that we didn't think about. That was a whole VFX thing, and I'm sure it was also maybe Ryan the showrunner kind of thing. But this is a great example how you build scenes like that. They coming from a concept, but they actually become so much more by everybody just being creative and just wanting the scene to be better.
And then it leads into like you know, a body for the transition. It's like a you know, seamless transition.
A huge thing by itself is like, okay, there originally was not, it was just a dragon flying over, and then I thought, well, what happens if it's kind of like the dragon finishing off, and then, you know, Claire was like, yeah, what, you know, I would like also to be a guy there being torched. So every time you think things like that, is just like ADs and everybody starts freaking out. It's like, oh my god, that's an element that we need to shoot, and then we're going to shoot against blue screen, and production is like, oh, we need to bring the you know, a part of a boat, and then it starts getting big and big. But that's pretty much the process. It's really fun.
Was there a similar conversations between that and this shot, or was it something unrelated that, you know, ended up being matching afterwards?
It ended up being matching, although it does become a motif, the whole fire, you know, just glowing kind of thing. We definitely, when we thought about this scene in paper, this was a very different scene, but what happened with the scene is that we never found the perfect location. We never found that perfect cave. It's not about having money. It's just that production could not just go and fly somewhere else to find the perfect location and shoot for 3 days and move the whole unit, which is like 1,500 people. We kind of adapted this scene for that. We found something that kind of looked like a cave in Wales, and we decided that There was no way we were gonna able to feed the whole scene, because the scene originally happened more inside than out. So we kind of changed the scene a little bit, and then we shot it in a way that we could actually have Reina coming out, but just being silhouetted by some fire. We shot the element of her walking in the fire. We shot that separately, and we just had like a black cave in Wales, which wasn't even a cave. We had to blacken it. So that was a build, as opposed to the scene that we just described, which was kind of a pure creation and pure, this was just like problem solving. This was more like, how can we make the scene work, and how can we make it look cool, and kind of give the feeling of the scene with what we have at that point. So I think it turned out to be that those elements of Rena coming out with the fire. I think what really works about this scene is what comes later, which is her coming out and surprising us all that Sheep Stealer was in there, and just like this big massive dragon coming at us. I think I like that part of the scene the most. But yeah, I think this kind of works that way. It's also kind of like, how do we design scenes? It's a multi-collaboration. I mean, the element of creating the shots in the scene comes from mostly director and myself, but everybody kind of pitches in, and everybody's just so good and so dedicated in this show. Everybody kind of wants the best for this, for everything. So you always gotta listen. Okay, what do we do? And then you also, that's the leap of faith, right? At the end of the day, that you have such an amazing VFX and post-production team that it's gonna work out.
Yeah.
Even if they have to shoot it, even if we have to reshoot it. This scene we gotta actually reshot the coming out of her. We reshot it in February. So production stops, let's say in October, and then they kind of put the episodes together. They kind of know what they lack or they need to shoot, and then February, March, there's like an enhancement kind of like schedule to kind of do all these things. So we did that. Yeah, we did it again because it was not working in the beginning.
I have a film school. We're just opening on the 10th right now, and we already have some questions from future students that I'm going to be weaving in here. And Suelen Dominguez actually asked something that relates to what you're just talking about. On a production of the scale of House of the Dragon, which decisions do you make a point of resolving on set, and which do you prefer to leave for post-production? Because it goes against a little bit of like solve it in pre-production, right? But I imagine with such a talented team and a huge show, some things are left for post.
Well, nothing is really left for post. Maybe something is kind of like finished in a different way, but nothing is really left for post. Every decision needs to be made on the spot, and every decision you need to go on set with kind of like the scene that you want to shoot. And there's a lot of conversations about it, and there's maybe the resolution ends up being slightly different, but you never really just leave it on post. It's not like you shoot a blue screen, it's like, oh, well, just like they'll figure it out. No, you don't do that. In a show like this, you need to really previs and go through everything. Even for me, in this show, I do something that I don't normally do, which is, for example, if we're shooting something against blue screen, or we're shooting, a set that has to be extended, I actually do the research of what kind of sky do I want behind that blue screen, and specifically where the sun's going to be, what kind of clouds, what kind of color is the sky projecting. So for every scene, I make a library of skies, and I show them, and I just make sure that this is being followed through. And that was with everything that they replace. I'm a big part of it. And the decision making is, it's kind of like done from the very beginning. Season 1, we used a lot of volume. We shoot like 5-7 different sets in volume, and all those decisions were made in beforehand. You synchronize, Dragonfire with practical lighting on set. So yeah, everything is decided beforehand.
Moving forward a little bit to a different scene here. Obviously, this one was also incredible, but this one actually caught my eye because it had this naturalistic feel. And I wanted to ask you, like, what is the balance between natural light? How do you go back and forth between real locations and specifically using natural light in your favor as you're developing your lighting plan? And I don't know if it relates to this shot specifically, but it had that feel to me.
Yeah, I mean, good to hear that, because that was the intention. We go, we go to Wales for 6 to 8 weeks to shoot. Everybody goes to shoot their parts of the episodes, and we shoot everything that is location. Pretty much shoots in Wales. So everything that is beach, everything that is like forest, Dragonstone exterior, is shot in Wales. And what happens is we do shoot in Wales during the summer, so weather is very inconsistent. You can have it's super sunny day, and then the next day have rains all day. It's actually quite a mess. But what you do have is like some kind of control for the weather. You're able to block the sun a little bit, so it's not like you go out there and just like let's play the available light card. That's the light that you have, and that's the light that you're available. You have a light available, but you kind of need to control a little bit. So we have extreme situations. We have a storm, we don't shoot, or if it needs to be like a really gloomy scene and it's clear sky, you don't shoot. But other than extreme situations, you have to kind of deal with the weather. So basically what we try to do is control the light as much as we can, which means if you want to shoot with a backlight, or if you want to block the sun to not make it too shadowy, that we try it as much as we can. But we also want to enhance the locations. We want to see what's out there. In this scene in particular, there's a few elements that have been added by VFX. The boat at the far end, or I don't remember. I don't think there's anything added here. I think the bodies there are the actual bodies that were on set. So you have the haze. Everything is on camera. When we go to location, a very few things are added. If you're if you're multiplying, or a dragon, of course, but if you're multiplying the crowd or things like that, but you kind of choose your locations. You kind of choose the time of the day. We need to deal with tides, and in this kind of set specifically, you really need to plan around tides. And then we had the tide really kind of varies in the UK beaches. It's like, I'm as Mexican, I'm used that the tide really doesn't move on the beach, but here it really moved. The landscape completely changes. So it was, you have 3 hours to shoot the scene. If you don't shoot in those 3 hours, the set's gone. So you need to play around that. But you just prep. You just go out there, plan your sets, plan your scenes. How much time do you need to shoot it? There's a whole team of amazing ADs who will help you, kind of set it out for you. But also you wanna really enhance the locations, because we do travel to beautiful locations. So you really want to get the most out of them.
Moving on to some dragon shots here. I was wondering if you guys, obviously dragons are creatures that are not, well, before Game of Thrones, they were not that present in TV series or in a lot of movies as these mythical creatures, and you guys add such a level of realism to them. I wonder if there's any kind of dragon manual you guys, or a briefing that you guys have.
There's all kinds of briefings. There's like we get a whole study of each dragon. So we get like each dragon has this whole, not only a whole study of the dragon, but also like a psychological study of the dragon. Like, this dragon would do this. This dragon is kind of like bad tempered. Like, this dragon is like itchy and it's moving. Like Caraxes is the dragon that's always kind of moving. It's always kind of like but looking for something to do, and it has this really long neck. So we're always dealing with the neck. How does the light reflect the dragon? There's a whole study of the light in each dragon. So we really kind of know our dragons as we shoot them. I've shot a lot of Caraxes, so I really feel like I know the dragon. That's why there's a scene in episode 4 that he's drinking water, because we wanted to show that side of a dragon, just like drinking water. That's it. And we really thought it was a really good scene opener. It's like this dragon just drinking milk, water in the lake, and then just like stepping out of frame, and then the scene has nothing to do with him. First of all, we do know that we do know their personalities, how they move, but also we know their sizes. If they were if it's like a 30-foot dragon, or this dragon is like a big cow. And then we use that for the framing. We also have some rules. We don't shoot people riding dragons. We don't shoot close-ups, just close-ups. We need to see some dragon. We kind of found out the hard way that when you do that, when you see a dragon fly and you just shoot to the close-up, it just doesn't look real. It just looks like old movies trying to get away with that. So we usually never do that. We have a rule, which is people on dragons need to be you need to see their knees. You need to see a little bit of the chair. And that has helped us a lot to get some realism out of that. The other rule we have, which I think is the most important, is we always shoot dragons as if dragons existed, as if they were there. So what does that mean? If the dragon's flying, how will we shoot a dragon flying? We would rig a camera on the dragon, or we would shoot it from a helicopter, or and that's the way we plan our shots. So there's nothing animation Marvel-y kind of thing that we would do. We would shoot it as if we were there, as if we were rigging a camera on the dragon, or as if we were shooting like a helicopter to dragon. And I think just by having those very simple rules, we've kind of like found a way into realism, if you can say that about dragons. But we don't break like physical rules in terms of shooting them. We don't kind of like don't go across them. We don't we try to make it as we were there. And just the concept by itself, which is weird, but helps us a lot. Like we how we shoot them. If they were here, we joke a lot on set. It's like, oh, Caraxes couldn't make it today. He's like, he's sick. But that's a standard, and I think it kind of like it just like makes the whole thing nice, and we have a lot of fun with it. And it's like, yeah, they're part of the show. Like they're part of the. It's almost like they're part of the crew.
That's incredible. Do you have any favorite dragon?
I think Caraxes, because I think it's the one that I shot the most. I used to have a favorite, but they got killed because when I shot season 1, episode 9, the dragon that oh my god, I forgot the name, and she was my favorite.
Oh my god.
The one that's the dragon pit comes out of the floor, with Renee.
We'll look it up and put it on screen.
Yeah. Oh my god. But anyway, and then it got killed in season 2, and then I shot the head, being escorted all through King's Landing. But now, episode 3. I mean, season 3, we shot Caraxes so much that I think that's my favorite. It has a lot of character. I think it's and it kind of completely goes with Damon personality. I think it's the right dragon for him.
Just a technical question. And when you're shooting the dragon riders, how do you plan the lighting? Do you talk to VFX to know exactly like how the dragon will like relate to his surrounding in order to know how the lighting will behave? How does that process work?
And that's one of the most complicated parts of this whole dragon process, because and that has evolved a little bit throughout the seasons. Now the way that we found is the most efficient is we do put the dragon riders on a hydraulic gimbal, and we shoot them on a motion control rig. And I guess, I mean, that's just for VFX to always have like, this keyframes to follow and to just like track, because we shoot them against blue screen, but it's not a normal blue screen. We actually, that's the one thing that we kept out of the volume. So we light from the screens. So the screens will have either a fire effect. It's kind of a little bit what they did with Gravity, Guadon movie. So the screens are not the background. They can be the blue screen that kind of tracks the camera, and the blue screen will follow, but it's mostly about to light the whole thing with screens. So we'll have a fire effect on the screens, a fire effect that moves, a sun that moves. Basically what we'll do all this dragon riding shots is we'll previs them. Once we approve them, the VFX will actually program the screens with the background and with the camera movement, and then we'll just come in and light it. So this source should move from right to left, as the dragon is turning. So it's a quite complicated thing to do, but if you bring it down to the basic, if you break it down, it's actually quite simple. It's just like you kind of try to make an asset with the real, environment. Even the dragon wings shadow, that's also programmed into the screen. So you go in there, it's like, oh, there's a shadow here because the wings are blocking the sun, or this, he's turning right, so the sun is moving to the right, because kind of where the sun is for the whole scene. So you go in there, you spend a couple of days programming all these lights, which are mostly within the screens. You can have some lights from the outside, but basically you program that, and then kind of like you run through some rehearsals, and then you just approve it. You never see the background until the very end, but that's where VFX comes. So out of all that design, they will adapt the background. Let's say season 1 wasn't. We still were kind of like managing, or we were learning a lot about how to shoot them. So there was a lot more of trial error. But by season 3, we really know what we're getting into. So we really start thinking ahead of how we're going to light each scene and how we're going to program the screens. Quite interesting. It's quite a cool project. Yeah, it's quite a cool part of the project.
Yeah, I imagine like your gaffer must come in at some point as well, right? And is he included with the VFX in terms of like conversations to understand what's happening, and that way like your whole team knows what's going to happen as well, right?
Absolutely. There's full communication between VFX, us, Grips, Electrics. One of the great things about the show is that we're all there the whole time. So we're all incorporated the very beginning, and we're all there for the whole 10 months of shoot. We're constantly talking, we're constantly feeding back. VFX will just like has all the authority and to just call the gaffer and say, we probably want to rig this because, we need a blue screen to be lit this way. So it's a huge communication strategy between all departments, but it does work. Like you figure out maybe you can't do that in every project, but because we do have the luxury of time, we do have the luxury of being there together for 10 months. Then there's just this constant flow of communication, which I think at the end it really pays off.
Very well-oiled machine. You can see it through the TV show.
I think at this point it is. I think, from season 1 to season 3, crew changed a lot. There was like a big shift, but then 2 and 3 has been the exact same crew. So everybody kind of knows what to, who to contact, or, what to do in every way.
It's so nice to hear that, like, even from season 1 to now, you see a growth, because I feel like as a DP, sometimes I wonder that you need to come with all the answers, but it's nice to know that even in a show this big, you guys gave yourself grace because you're doing something no one has ever done before. That's like, yeah, part of the process is growing and changing, and we're going to learn from our mistakes, even with like the close-ups on the dragon. So yeah, it's very inspiring as a cinematographer to hear that, that you can grow.
Yeah, in so many ways, it's like the ideal way to shoot film. It's like everybody there, everybody wants to be there, everybody's proud to be there, but also kind of like the follow-up, how you set up a scene and then how everybody collaborates on that, but everybody kind of respects each other and their work, and everybody's really good at what they do. And then, yes, everybody has a learning process, and everybody kind of like just wants the best thing for the show, and everybody also kind of understands. And I think it's a constant of this, like it is an evolving crew. It is a crew that makes it better than 2 years ago, it's like just because you're learning out of it, and there's a lot of feedback from everybody. So yeah, it's great.
So moving on to the next scene here, Danny from our school also brought up, what precautions do you take on House of the Dragon to create a moody, dramatic atmosphere while still ensuring that viewers can clearly read and see what's going on? What's your general approach, philosophy for exposure, I guess, and darker scenes?
Well, yeah, especially, the franchise has a history on that, right? I think we foresee this thing, we know that's a thing. I would say it's an issue, but it's, yes, you want to, I think early on, as a crew for this show, and after having lots of conversations, like, what's the best way? Because, I'm a very good friend of an amazing DP, Fabian Wagner, who was the one that shot Long Night and, all those dark episodes in Thrones. And he's not only amazing, but he's very talented, and those shows were not dark. It's just like they were, the way people see them comes out as dark, which, that's my point. At the end of the day, when as a DP, you need to consider not only people won't see your show in the most pristine, best, TV, lights off, and you have to shoot the best way possible, what you think it's good looking and what's the best thing for the story. But you do also need to consider the people who are watching this on an iPhone or an airplane, and you're not shooting them for them either. But there's the two extremes, and there has to be something in between, and you have to consider that a lot of people, most of the people, will not see a show like this in pristine conditions. That being said, and after a long conversation with the show started, is like, we're not gonna limit ourselves. We're not gonna make the show brighter just because people are gonna complain, but we're not gonna go that far. We're not gonna go that far as like people can't watch an episode. What we did in the show in particular is we just took a lot of precautions. We have a lot that we work on set that's actually pretty safe. So what we are watching is like a stop and a half darker than the footage. So the footage already has that protection, and then we feel very comfortable about lighting. We really don't think about how dark this is on the spot. I think we just engraved in the back of our heads what kind of show we're doing, that all these people are watching it, and that people deserve the chance to see the show in a good way. So I think it's just more about knowing that we protected ourselves, when we're shooting something darker when it's actually not, but we also kind of like know that the level of contrast, the level of shadows, things that don't work, like, unless it's a very specific scene or it's a very specific dialogue. You probably want to see the actors' faces as they talk, and you want to create a mood a moody place or a darker place, but without actually, because you also want to see those sets. And that's a lot of conversations that at least I've had with production designer Jim Clay. Like, I want to see your sets, Jim. I don't worry, I'm never gonna make it as dark as unless we're talking about a cave, or unless we're talking about the dungeons where the script specifically says you can't see anything. Then I do want to go and see your sets because they're just beautiful, and the wardrobe is beautiful. And I consider myself a dark dark person when it comes to work. And I think all of us at this point have that idea in our heads that we really want to make this show. We want to see things. So that I don't think we worry about it on the day to day. We just we know what we want, and we if it goes. And we just protected ourselves with that lot. So if anything we can be pulled up if they don't like it.
What's your general philosophy on how clinical you want to be about exposure?
I'm coming from the film world, and I'm a person who's used to bring a light meter on set and use a light meter and read every light, and so I'm pretty clinical. Now, I also have to say that in this digital world with access to this amazing DITs that we have, and sometimes I do have to say, with after shooting for 30 years, I just turn to my DIT and say, like, how do you is it okay? Is the negative dense enough? And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. And then because I have a monitor that says that it looks the way I want it to look, then I don't follow it, but I'll still go and read. But that's just the thing that I have. I just need to have that control. For me, reading is not about having everything in the perfect exposure anymore. It's having starting points. So I know if my key light is at 2.8, and then I have to do a whole scene, and then I know my key light is always going to be at 2.8. So the best way to do that is go and read it. I come from there, so I do that. But I'm also the kind of person, of the kind of cinematographer that really doesn't mind the kind of taken to the extreme, especially towards the dark. Like, I can't see anything. The light meter not having a reading, reading E, and then still let's just go for it, kind of thing.
Yeah, as we go into the last kind of scenes and subjects that I wanted to touch on, I feel that there's a theme of blue and red. There's this balance in a lot of scenes that have this contrast, this color contrast. Is it something? What kind of conversations were around a color, and what's your relationship with your colorist for this project?
That's really engraved in the whole show. I mean, at this point, it's not like we're running on auto, but there's a lot of decisions that were made 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and we don't have to worry about those. First conversations were very basic. It's like, okay, this is a show that has 3 sources of light, moon, sky, and fire. And other than that, that's it. Is that we have to play with those 3. So where do we put those 3 elements in the color space, right? It's like, so how does the fire because we shoot a lot of practical fire. So where do we want that to live? And those are conversations that we had. We did a lot of tests. We actually, from season 1, season 2, we switched cameras just because of the fire and how the new Alexa 35 was responding to the fire. We tested all the cameras, and we decided that was the best camera to shoot fire in. So where, okay, on a night scene, where do we want the fire to kind of land? Where do we want the moon to land? And then where do we want to be our white? Where is that? Same thing with daylight, and then same thing with moon. So those are the common kind of approaches that we have after a lot of tests and a lot of talk. We try to not go really far from that, although we do. Sometimes I'll see footage from somebody else, and the color temperature in the camera is way off. It's like, okay, well, it looks really cool. Yeah, like I said, we have a show lot that kind of runs most of the show. Sometimes we tweak it a little bit. We CDL almost every scene, but just slightly. We never stay away too much from that lot, and that lot has a little bit of blue engraved on the blacks. So when it goes darker, it will go colder. So if you see every time the scene is kind of darker, it'll just read, unless it's pure fire, it'll just read just cooler. Like you see this walls here on the far left, that's just cooler because it's darker. And that's kind of where the show lot takes us. I mean, the highlight goes a little bit, to the yellow world. So everything that's a little bit burnt out will go to the warmer. So that's kind of like the show kind of where it lives. And then you can if you want to do dusk light or sunset, streak of light coming into the room, then you can add all kinds of other colors. But basically, that's kind of where the show color range goes by, from colder lower tones, kind of like normal midtones to warmer highlights.
And I see a lot of atmospherics being used throughout the show. What's the challenge here? Like, I mean, I think the question is twofold, right? One, what is the storytelling element that you think atmospherics and smoke, like this, for instance, can add? Because I see it being used very lightly across all sorts of mediums just to create something. I wonder for you guys, what are the conversations around this, and how hard is it to wrangle like the right amount of smoke?
I mean, we're lucky that the four of us really like haze. But I've always loved haze. I mean, for me, haze is a huge element of lighting. And when somebody asked me, so what's up with haze? And it's like, okay, imagine your hometown. Imagine there's a mountain. Most people live near mountains. There's some days that you can see it very clearly, very sharp and crispy, and then some days that it looks really far away. And that's haze. That's particles in the air. So particles in the air will just give you depth and will give you a sense that things are further away, or it'll just give you a sense of density. And so that's how we use, and that's why we use atmosphere and or smoke and on a film frame, even if you don't look at it. Now, when you see it, it's because it's having contact or interaction with light, which kind of gives you the whole idea of shafts. It's no secret that all the way from Thrones, shafts of light have been a constant, and then maybe that's not the reason we're using, or not at the beginning. It's like, oh, Thrones did a lot of shafts of light, we need to do the same. I think it's more about the set themselves and how they're built, and where the window sources. That's a big conversation that we have about windows being the real source of light. We barely have lights that are not coming from somewhere that they should, either a window or fireplace, the skylight. We barely don't use light sources coming from above, like top lights or top soft lights. That wouldn't be a cheat, but we kind of this is something we talked about. We try not to do that. So windows being a big source of lighting for the whole show, that means that you have two kinds of light that you can put through a window. You can put a soft light, you can put a hard light. Sometimes because of the of the narrative of the scene, you want to put something softer. When you put something harsher, that's when you start creating shafts. And that's an element that is really fun to play with. It definitely has a weight in the frame. So you want to use that, you want to maybe a shaft of light, you want to have the right part of the frame just filled with a shaft of light, or you want that shaft of light just to be bouncing. I'm somebody that sometimes think light can't be too convenient, so like the perfect ray of light is hitting the face of the actor at that specific time. That for me sometimes reads it too convenient. It's just something that I just have. So maybe what I try to do is the shaft of light is not in the totally convenient place, but the bounce of that light is convenient for the actor. So that's kind of how I like to play things, and that kind of like just motivates everything, right? Kind of like always motivating. What is that light doing there? What's the purpose of it? What's the purpose of 200 candles in the room? It can't be just like for free. Somebody enters a room and there's 200 candles lit. That's not real. So in the unreal world that we're living in Dragons, there has to be at least some rules of realness. So fire is not there if it's not supposed to be, right? That scene that we were watching before about that dinner with a huge table, that's one of the scenes. Okay, I can get away with 100 candles. Let's light the whole scene with candles. I love it. It's beautiful light, and I can put 200 candles in there and it'll just look beautiful. But you can do that in a room with one character, and because then it'd be totally unrealistic. So you kind of play with those things and you kind of have fun with it. The bracers, the sconces in the rooms. And yeah, the shaft of lights and the atmos are a big part. The whole thing, every single scene that's an interior will have atmos in the show. And I think it kind of like works with the whole medieval, not everything is new kind of thing. I think it just works with it.
Yeah. Historic, right? The epic feel of the whole story.
I mean, atmos is engraved to film history. Like, it's used in movies and in scenes that you would never think it's there, but it's there.
From a lighting perspective, now that you mentioned, I was very curious, what is your approach here? Are you using something to lift the exposure, or are you just going
it's just candle. Just candles. I mean, I think I had a soft source, like a box on top, but usually I just use, I have a thing with those fill boxes at the top, which is I kind of dim them all the way down, and then I start dimming them up, and when I notice it, I just backtrack a little bit and that's it. So it's I usually have them at like 2%. It almost kind of has the same meaning as Atmos, just to fill out a little bit of those blacks, just to give you a little bit of that, not even fill light. It's just like density. But we almost never use them. In this in particular, if you see the top of her head, you can see a little bit of a soft shine there. So that's the softbox working from the top, but you see how low it is, and you can see slightly different temperature. That's because I just wanted the ambience to feel like it's some kind of bounce on the ceiling, so it's not as warm as the table. But then everything else is candles. When you can get away with putting 200 candles on the scene, you really don't need any other source of light. That's just beautiful, source. Everybody's looking at the middle of the table, so you don't need to fill out from any other place, and it just falls out beautifully. So that's the excuse to not use any other light.
Amazing. And obviously it must be really practical that their hair is white too, right? Because it makes it easier to
Yeah.
a little bit.
Although it can be a nightmare sometimes, because you can, when you're shooting that kind of hair against white burnout skies, that becomes VFX. It's funny. VFX is more concerned about the white hair than the dragons and anything else. It's like the one thing you'll have a supervisor standing right next to you, giving you a hard time the whole day. It's about white hair against white background.
And I love those. I love those insights, by the way. Just the hair, and I think the trick of like just backtracking a little bit. When you see the source,
whenever you see it, and you backtrack, and then that's it.
Amazing tip. Amazing. I'm sure we're gonna take that with us. Awesome. I have one last question to wrap things up. And then Anna, I think, has hers as well. From Rodrigo. He's asking, even with such a strong theoretical foundation, we know that much of the learning in cinematography happens through hands-on experience on set. Some of the most important lessons come when a problem or unexpected situation arises and has to be solved within minutes, sometimes seconds. Over the course of your career, do you have any situation that has taught you the most, or like that really kind of is seared to your brain and you still bring with you in a very conscientious way?
I mean, on the spur of the moment, I don't know. It's a really good question, because you use what you learned and you use your experience to solve the problems. Like when you're in deep trouble on a set, that's when you go to your comfort zone, and that's where you go to what you know. So all your knowledge, I don't think it's about creating, it's about solving, right? So that's kind of what I think that's what the knowledge is about, is being able to solve problems. And it's just it was like, okay, what am I doing here? Oh my God, this is not coming right. And then you gotta go back, you go to the experience, and you go to like, this has happened to me before. How would I solve it? I think it's a creation. It's like that first stepping on a set, and it's like, oh, how am I gonna solve it? But that's the fun part, right? Like you're creating there. Like I usually try to go to sets and just stand there, even if it's a couple of minutes. In shows like this, it's harder. You go into a set blank because you probably had some prep and you probably have time to think, and you should. But when you go into on a commercial, or it said you've never been in a location you've never been in, or you've been there but you've never, and then just standing in the middle of that place and just trying to visualize what the set's going to look like. Because there's a lot that you leave for the very last minute. There's a lot to leave for the day. You do your floor plans, you do your lighting schemes, but you should always leave some room to go into that set and imagine something. And maybe something you thought about in the shower, maybe something you thought about when you're on the way to set. But it's like, oh, what happens if I just have that shining spark of light that I hadn't thought of, but that's just going to bounce back, and it's going to reflect on that, and that's just going to make the scene. I think my hardest moments have been when I actually choose wrongly, when I make that decision and I 2-3 shots after, I'm like, I should have not that. Like I'm just going to struggle with this light the whole day. And it does happen. It's like you light the first, you light that first setup, and then you realize that's not going to work for the rest of the scene, but you need to match it. So now you have to struggle with it the whole entire day, or for days, trying to go around it. That would be the first thing. You can't just backtrack. You kind of need to have the tools or the knowledge to how to make it, how to make it work. And I guess that those are the worst parts, when you realize that you establish the wrong light for the first setup, and then you need to deal with it for 20 other setups, and how you're going to do that. Oh my God, like it looked amazing on that first shot, because it was a backlight, but now the director is asking me to turn around. So now it's going to become the front light for the rest of the scene. Kind of something like that. Kind of like those are the worst moments. Everything else you can either use your creativity to work around or use your knowledge and experience and say, okay, this has happened to me before. I'm just going to, deal with this and just do that. And just going to trick that. I'm going to turn that into a window and then just kind of, I think your knowledge kind of gives you the power to solve some problems. But I think if anything, if I were to turn this into an advice, it would be just like, really don't think about your first setup. Think about all the other setups that follow, and think how that your decision in the first place is going to affect everything else, and just try to make it work in a way that maybe not all your shots are going to look amazing, but the scene's going to look great, as opposed to your first shot is going to look amazing and then the rest of the scene, because that will happen. That will happen, that when you come to a set and the director will tell you, no, I want to shoot the other way around. And you're like, whoa, wait, but that just lit for this. And that's, kind of going back to the beginning, is that's not your vision. So you should not fight for your scene to be shot the way the light accommodates you, right? So unless it's something simple, it's like, or unless the director's like, do you want to shoot this way? Is the light better for here? Light's a priority. But if you don't, then you need to kind of like, bite the bullet. It's like, okay, this is not going to be my best lit scene, but I'm just going to try to make it work.
No, I think this is such an interesting insight. I've heard even before at AFI, like don't create your lights so you're lighting yourself into a corner. Like think about the whole process. And again, as you mentioned, it can be tough when obviously you plan ahead, but like if the director just throws a curveball to you and you're like, oh, okay, now I need to figure this out and figure this out really quickly. But I love what you said about just, sometimes you just need, I feel like we all really love making not only beautiful images, because depending on the projects, that is not the goal at all, but, making the best out of your work. And it's hard, I feel, sometimes to just embrace creating something that it's not your best work. But I think that's part of the job as well, like you just said. And I think for me, that's always, that has been the biggest lesson, in the collaborative process, hearing from your experience, just learning when it's okay if it's not always perfect. Sometimes it just part of your work is delivering the work and servicing the director's vision. So that is such a great insight. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You need to go to bed knowing that, don't take the kind of work with you. Like you take the work that, oh my God, was amazing today. And because that is the other side, right? Sometimes the days are just great. The light is just perfect. And the balance you put there will work for the whole scene, and you barely touch the light. That's perfect. But yeah, sometimes you go home, it's like, oh, that was such a horrible scene. But you need to put it behind. You need to go back there the next day and just try to keep it working. You can't just, you can't just stay in your head the fact that you shot a scene that you didn't like, or it was awful. Because sometimes you're like, oh, what scene was awful? And people will say, no, it was great. But sometimes the scene is awful and you just have to live with it. I say that we're not paid to do beautiful shots. We get paid to match scenes. That's the hard part of our job. Making beautiful shots, not that everybody can do it. No, it's not easy, but that's kind of like the fun part. The actually, rolling your sleeves part of the job is to match and to make that match great, and you should be able to walk out of that set saying this scene matches, and this scene, no matter how you cut it, it just looks like it's the same scene. I think that's a big struggle and battle, but that's also kind of like, that's where our knowledge is useful for. And I think that's the challenge. Beautiful shots, we'll have a lot of those, but matching scenes those are the ones that are hard.
It's very true. And that's where our light meter can really help us, right? Just keeping that contrast.
That's something that I recommend always my students. I mean, I do say a couple of things to my students as a technical thing. It's like, okay, so you need to use a light meter, even if it's for whatever reference, but you need to live in a space where you know where things are. You just go to the monitor and it looks beautiful, and then you come back, relight, or you're doing the other side, and then you come back, it looks beautiful. That really doesn't, it just means that you like both. It doesn't mean that it really, they're living in the same universe in terms of density, in terms of exposure, in terms of amounts of light. You can't just go and add lights ad libitum. You have to kind of keep control of your set, and the way you keep control is you keep control of the exposure. And the other thing that I always say is, like, the day that you guys can shoot a movie without a monitor, that's the day that you're you can consider yourself to be a DP. Without looking at a single screen, and the movie comes out okay, then that's the whole purpose.
That's amazing advice. I agree with you. Seeing like the program at AFI, I love that they left that to be the last thing we do, you know, like just shoot without a monitor, just trust yourself, trust your light meter, and trust your eye, which is something that I feel like sometimes even shooting on digital, you can be so reliant on the screen, you know, and then when you're shooting on film or without a screen, just doing that rehearsal of like blocking your screen if you're shooting on digital, it's really interesting to see like, yeah, this is how I saw it and this is how I came out. And, you know, obviously knowing the limitations of your stock and everything, but yeah, that's great advice.
I think a monitor is great. I mean, technology is always, it's just making things easier for us. And I think it works. I never recommend people to shoot without a monitor, but I think you should have the ability to do that. And even as an exercise, just, you know, the shot, just stay away from the monitor, just get your light meter, just from 0 to the end, just don't look at a screen. Don't even look at if you're in camera, if you're operating, just look at the viewfinder. If you don't, you know, not even look at the monitor camera. Just trust your instinct, trust your knowledge. Just shoot the scene without looking at anything, and then, you know, you'll feel better. You'll feel like you have actual control of this, and that's what we do. We thrive on control. That's, you know, that's the whole purpose of being so technical about it.
Thank you so much. This has been such an amazing class.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Truly, Alejandro.
I've been watching your channel. It's amazing. You know, it's Portuguese. I don't stand a lot of Portuguese, but it's a great channel, and what you guys are doing is great. And no, thank you.
I appreciate you very much, Alejandro. Is there anywhere that people can find you? Any projects coming up you want to put out there or anything? Actually,
this has been the first year in like 8 that I haven't shot anything up after. Well, I've shot a few commercials after Dragons. The last thing I released was Man on Fire, and which I shot in Brazil, and then Dragons. 2026, it's all been commercials. Not that I took a gap year, but I took a very easy year watching the World Cup with my kids at home in Mexico. So I don't have anything coming up. I'm just chilling and, you know, shooting commercials, but yeah, hopefully in January we'll be back in London to shoot the final season of Dragons.
Amazing. We'll be very much looking forward to that. And Instagram is a good place, I guess, for people to find you.
Instagram, I kind of restarted going to Instagram. I'm enjoying it. I'm not like full on, but I got this little Ricoh monochrome camera and taking pictures, and I'm kind of like starting to post them. I'm Alex MTZ on Instagram.
Amazing.
Yeah,
we'll link it down below. Thank you so much, Alejandro. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
If you ever come to LA, please let us know. I would be happy to take you to some coffee. Right?
Yeah, we would love to.
If you're ever in Mexico, give me a call.
We will.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.